Okay, let's go ahead and get started. It's 1 o'clock. Welcome to the webinar, Access for All. I'm celebrating 30 years of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Thank you for joining us. My name is Angie Sievert, and I am the Operations Manager and Accessibility Coordinator with Mid-America Arts Alliance. Mid-America is one of the 6 national regional arts organizations, and we and other funders to strengthen and support the artists, cultural organizations, and communities throughout the region and beyond. It's support from the NEA and our 6 state arts agencies that we were able to bring this webinar to you today. Before we proceed to the topic, I wanted to go over a few housekeeping items. Closed caption is available for this webinar. If you click on the closed caption button at the top of your screen, you can turn it on. You can adjust the size of the text by clicking the arrow next to the Start Stop Video and selecting Video Settings. And then you can click on Accessibility and move the slider to adjust the size of that text. You can also view closed caption by clicking on a link that I will be placing in the chat box. This will open a separate window where you can select English or Spanish captioning. You can adjust the size there, the color, the font, and scroll through the text in that window. You can also ask questions during the webinar by clicking on the Q&A box located at the top of the screen. We will be monitoring those questions during the webinar, and we may also have time for additional questions at the end of the webinar. Before we start with the presentation, I would like to introduce Christine Bile. She's the Director of Arts and Humanities Grant Programs at Mid-America Arts Alliance, and she is going to briefly describe a new grant opportunity at Mid-America involving accessibility.
Thanks, Angie. As Angie said, I'm Christine Bile, the Director of Grant Programs for Mid-America Arts Alliance. To mark the 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, Mid-America Arts Alliance will offer Arts Access Micro Grants. Through this grant, we intend to support accessibility services for arts events and programs that take place at nonprofit arts organizations across our 6-state region, which includes the states of Arkansas, Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, Oklahoma, and Texas. Eligible grant requests can range from $250 to $1,000 for access services at events that take place before June 30th of next year. This could include, but is not limited to, support for large print performance programs or exhibition materials. It could support the creation of Braille materials or support fees for licensed American Sign Language interpreters or live audio description, as well as fees for language translation services. In this day and age of COVID-19, this grant can support not only in-person access services, but also those that stream online, so that the grant could help offset the cost of live captioning or on-screen American Sign Language interpretation or transcription services. We're putting the finishing touches on this grant program and hope to have more information on the Mid-America Arts Alliance website in mid-August. I hope that you'll take a look at it and take advantage of this opportunity. We really look forward to supporting your efforts to reach more people. Thanks.
Thanks, Christine. If they have any questions, can they just email you? Christine's email address is christine@maaa, that's 3AAAs.org. You can email her with any questions about that grant program once it's up in August.
Great. I'll put my email in the chat as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Joining us today from the National Endowment for the Arts to present accessibility is Beth Benvenu, the Accessibility Director, and Lauren Tezzolino, the Accessibility Specialist.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you, Angie and Christine, for having us here today. We're thrilled to be able to talk to you about accessibility and the Americans with Disabilities Act, which just celebrated its 30th anniversary on Sunday. And I also want to congratulate Mid-America Arts Alliance on this new grant opportunity. It's so important to provide the funding for accessibility, especially during this time. And we really thank you so much for making that available folks within the Mid-America region. So just to introduce ourselves briefly before we get into the presentation, to visually describe myself, I am a white woman with shoulder-length brown hair. I'm wearing a black and white sleeveless top with a black chair behind me, and also a screen to hide my clutter is white with black frames. For a little bit of an accessibility check, sometimes we like to mention what our disabilities might be, to explain anything about ourselves. I am a person who stutters, so I might be fluent this whole time. You might hear me stutter a little bit, block on a few things, so just know that that's what's happening. I was explaining to Christine and Angie that I have allergies right now, and I have to keep drinking fluids to make sure I don't start coughing, so you might see me drinking out of a mug. But it's just vitamin C drink. And so I'd like to turn it over to Lauren to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here today. I am a white woman with an olive complexion, mid-length, dark brown hair, curly hair, and a white background with a piece of artwork in the back, which looks like an abstract bouquet of flowers. I also like to give people a heads up that my cat, Flip, might be joining us, and if that is the case, he is a long-haired cat that also looks part squirrel, part rabbit, and he's white and orange. So just a little heads up, but I hope that does not happen, unfortunately. And yeah, we're happy to get started and jump in.
Great. And my cat will not join us because I'm behind a closed door, but you might hear him complaining about the closed door. So I will go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to go through some slides to talk a little bit about accessibility and the Americans with Disabilities Act. So I will do a couple of things first. And all right. Okay, so we already went ahead and described ourselves. So I will go on to the next slide. So 30 years ago on July 26th, President H.W. Bush signed the Americans with Disabilities Act into law. It was a long fought battle and series of advocacy actions by the disability community. And so it was a huge accomplishment on the part of the disability community. And this photo here is it's a black and white photo that with a banner that says, it's the Martin Luther King Jr. quote, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." And there's a number of people in it in wheelchairs and other devices. And two people that I want to point out are Judy Heumann, who's wearing the white shirt with a hat in a power chair, and Justin Dart to the right with a hat and a suit on. They are two of the prominent disability rights advocates that really pushed for this law. And you would see Judy Heumann in the documentary called Crip Camp, which is on Netflix, which documents the history of the disability rights movement and how it got started at a summer camp for kids with disabilities. So I highly recommend it if you get a chance to see it. So as for those of you who aren't familiar with us, we are the National Endowment for the Arts is a public agency dedicated to advancing artistic excellence, creativity, and innovation for the benefit of individuals and communities. We award more than $115 million each year to arts organizations of all sizes in all 50 states and US territories. And we recently awarded $75 million of funding from the CARES Act to help address the situation that's arisen with the COVID pandemic. So the Office of Accessibility, we are the technical assistance arm of the agency. We help make the arts accessible to people with disabilities, veterans, older adults, and those living in institutional settings, such as hospitals, hospice, and also correctional facilities. We provide technical assistance to applicants, grantees, and constituents, and we support the accessibility coordinators at state arts agencies, as well as regional arts organizations like the Mid-America Arts Alliance. And I want to point out our relationship with the states and regions. Each of them has a dedicated accessibility coordinator, and they work to promote accessibility support and awareness, make connections throughout their states and regions, to assess and identify the needs in your community, and you can use them as a resource. So we encourage you to reach out to your state arts agency as well as your local arts agency, because they are also a resource as well. And I want to thank the Mid-America Arts Alliance, the Arkansas Arts Council, Kansas Creative Arts Industries Commission, Missouri Arts Council, Nebraska Arts Council, Oklahoma Arts Council, and the Texas Commission on the Arts, which are all part of your region and do wonderful work in the area of accessibility and support for artists with disabilities. And they're great partners for us as well. We rely heavily on the states and regions because we can't be out there in every state. We can now that we have this virtual ability, but we really need folks to be able to get out and work with the constituents within each state. So we really appreciate the work of the accessibility coordinators. And today we will be talking about disability etiquette and language, an overview of the ADA and also the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, physical and program access, and we're going to pay a little bit of attention to accessibility for virtual events, how to budget for accessibility, the communication that's necessary, the partnerships that can help you out, and also resources. And some of the common themes that we'll see throughout this presentation are partnerships and collaboration, communication, being proactive and available to receive patron accessibility requests, including people with disabilities on your staff and boards in all phases of your projects, staff training, and also how important it is to start small and take the first step before you continue on. So just a little bit about disability in the United States. Sorry if we're going a little fast. You can always type in questions in the chat. I'm not able to monitor it, but Lauren and Angie are available to do that. But just a little bit about disability. Just a caveat about statistics. There are a number of different measures of disability from different agencies in the United States and around the world. There's the American Community Survey, which taps into the census, and there's also the Center for Disease Control. So the CDC data currently says that there are 61 million Americans living with disabilities, which is 26% of the population. People with disabilities are the largest minority group in the United States, and we often say that it's the only one that any of us can join at any time, whether through an illness or an injury. And so it's something that touches on all of our lives. Nearly 30% of families have a person with a disability, and also we have a growing older population as the boomers age and as we'll see as the millennials age. So we'll always have people with disabilities in our lives, in our communities that we need to be able to serve and make sure have access to the arts. And we'd like to also talk about how equity includes disability. We need to make sure that it's part of the diversity conversation, because accessibility is an organizational asset. Often it's cast as a burden, but think of it as an asset to your organization. Once you put in accessibility into place, it's useful for everyone. When you think about the captions on this Zoom webinar, anybody can use them and they can be helpful for anyone if you miss something someone says or if you want to look at the transcript. Disability is a vital and often overlooked part of diversity and equity work. We have a friend that Lawrence Carter Long, who's a disability advocate, likes to say that disability put the D in diversity. So it needs to be a part of it, and it's intersectional as well. Disability provides a unique perspective in artistic creation. We have wonderful colleagues with disabilities who are creating really interesting work that's informed by their disabilities. And it adds a whole new layer of creativity to some of the work out there that needs to be showcased. And then, as we see today, virtual access allows for a wider reach and is opening up to new audiences. People who either couldn't leave their homes or had a hard time getting to performance venues and museums, who have a hard time sitting for a long time. We now have access in our homes, at least during this COVID period, and I anticipate it continuing. So it's a way to reach a much wider audience. And because of the current situation with the pandemic, it's really important to make sure that what you are putting out there is accessible. And we have developed a resource guide to help ensure the accessibility of your virtual events. Just give me 1 second. I think I was going to turn this over to Lauren, who's going to talk a little bit about about this resource guide and then move us into the next section.
Yes, and you'll see I just inserted one of the link to the online guide in the chat. The other link that is provided is for a blog we wrote, which also connects to the online guide. And we developed this at the start of the pandemic, so there is more that we can be adding to it. We've included great links at the end. I highly recommend the link to HowlRound Theater Commons. They really take you through the step-by-step of how to put on a virtual event. And Rooted in Rights also is listed at the end of that online guide. So there are a lot of great resources, and it'll constantly be evolving. So please feel free. We'll address it during the program access part of this session, and we will continue the conversation. So thank you.
All right, so Lauren will continue with our discussion about language.
Yes.
Welcoming people to your organization.
So welcoming people with disabilities to your arts organization. A lot of times the first thing that we want to discuss is person-first language and other disability etiquette. So we recommend using person-first language. It can be different in other countries. The UK does it differently, where they use identity-first language, and also it depends on who the person is with the disability and how they would like to be referred to. So for two examples that we included are person with the disability. Instead of saying the disabled or the handicapped, you want to avoid using the word handicapped actually. That's discouraged, even though it's still written into a lot of laws. So we try to avoid the H word. And then also person without a disability, instead of saying normal or able-bodied, and as Beth mentioned earlier, able-bodied, everything is only temporary. So that is how we try to put into place person-first language. And Beth, if you'll, and also commonly you'll hear a person who uses a wheelchair or a wheelchair user, but trying to avoid words like wheelchair-bound or confined to, because a wheelchair is something that gives a person freedom. The next slide, thank you very much. Person who is blind or has low vision, instead of again generalizing the blind or the sightless, although we will talk about later schools for the blind, schools for the deaf, there are still areas where that language is used. There is a little bit different in the deaf community, where they do identity first language, deaf person, deaf community, and that is because that is more of a cultural identity. So the deaf community a lot of times prides itself on being deaf and using identity first language. So, and I'm going to discuss in a moment, we discourage using the word special needs, and we include a video, which we won't be showing, but in a few slides down, we'll discuss that language as well. So other tips, again, we mentioned trying to avoid using the word handicapped, and instead trying to put in disability or accessible person with a disability, accessible parking, accessible restroom. Avoiding the word special because it implies something is different and doesn't promote inclusivity. And then also avoiding words like challenged or impaired, where it may imply that something is broken or not working. So next slide, please. And so then again, coming to welcoming people with disabilities, that can look anything like your website and having an accessibility statement. We'll share a great one from Nebraska Arts Council later on, and having an accessibility webpage in terms of how people can, how to access your website, how to request accommodations. With any events, promoting that event's accessibility, we'll share disability icons that you can download and use, and of course, including any contact information for making requests. Disability representation, how are, do you have images of people on your website who have disabilities participating in events? And also that includes social media as well too. What are you sharing, and are you representing disability that way? But then also we'll discuss captioning videos and including alt text for images, so we'll get a little bit more technical later on. And then a lot of times it comes back to staff training, and because you can be following all the rules, but then if your frontline staff isn't implementing or isn't comfortable working with people with disabilities, that could pose some challenges. So we've also included 2 great links to training videos that we would be showing if we were in person right now. So one is the DC government is the disability sensitivity training video. I'll share the links once I'm done speaking, but you can easily Google that and that'll show up on YouTube. You'll see there's a screenshot with a big awkward stamp in red letters across. The center is a tall man. His name is Bob. And the DC government followed Bob around as he interacted with people with disabilities and made a lot of mistakes. And then the 2 other people in the video, one is a woman with a white cane and the other is a gentleman in a wheelchair. It's a very humorous video and how they present how a person with disability would like to be talked to on an everyday basis. So that's a great video we'll share with you. And then I always enjoy this one. It is for World Down Syndrome Day. They created a video called Not Special Needs by people who have Down syndrome and different actors, and explain why their needs aren't necessarily special. They're just regular everyday needs.
And I want to mention this is Lauren Potter, who you might have seen on the TV show Glee. And she's been in some other shows as well. All right.
A lot comes back to communication, customer service. If you, as we mentioned, always including some area where you can be approached either on your website or when we are back to being in person. Some of the projects we funded, when I go back and ask an arts organization how they decided to have a sensory-friendly performance, a lot of times that came from a parent who had a child who made a request on wanting to be close to a certain instrument or being able to be in a symphony audience. So it's just being approachable. And if you do receive requests, if you don't know how to accommodate a request, ask, listen, respond, and be available to receive. And we try to describe the pictures as well. So in this is an image from the Vermont Studio Center. They had an artist residency that was supporting artists with spinal cord injury. So in it is a gentleman who's a wheelchair user, and he is in an art studio, and he's using a paintbrush with his mouth and in the process of creating visual art. Next slide, Beth. Nothing about us without us is a common phrase used in the disability community. We recommend arts organizations include people with disabilities in all aspects, as we mentioned earlier, from planning, building and implementing projects. But then also, what does your staff look like? Are you including people with disabilities on your boards? Are your volunteers and other committees or panels, are they including people with disabilities? Community needs assessment. What are the needs of the community? Do you have certain organizations that are already serving people with disabilities or schools? But also just how are you reaching out to the community to find out what those needs are? And partnering with organizations serving people with disabilities. In this region, as far as the VSAs, I believe Art Spark Texas, which is in Austin, may be the only arts and disability organization that I'm thinking of at the moment that was a VSA affiliate. So that's just a wonderful example of organizations that you can work with. So checking in your state for that. And then also, how are you engaging artists with disabilities in your programs and in other levels of your project planning? Next slide. Oh, great. I'm going to turn it back over to Beth to get into accessibility laws.
Sure. And if we do say something like that we're not aware of an type of organization within your region, if you know of something, please enter it in the chat. We'd love to hear what we might have missed, who else is out there doing this work. I think that's great. So we'll just give a little bit of a background on the laws and regulations that are involved. All of what we've talked about so far about disability being an asset, accessibility being an asset, that's the positive side of it. And it's not to say that the laws are negative, but we want to remind you that it's important because not only because it's good for your organization, it's also required by law. So just for a second, this slide features 6 disability access symbols that are black and white. They represent closed captioning, large print, sign language interpretation, assisted listening devices, wheelchair accessibility, and accessibility for people who are blind. And you can find these symbols that you can use to advertise your accommodations in your print materials or in signage or on your website. And you can Google downloadable disability access symbols. They're from the Graphic Artists Guild. And Lauren can share the link. It's too hard to read off all the links, but we can make them available to you. So they're the two main laws that you probably heard of course, the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, but before that was the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. And that's what I mentioned that the film Crip Camp was about. I think I mistakenly said that it was related to the ADA, but Crip Camp was about the movement leading up to the 1970s, and that emerged out of when the Rehabilitation Act was passed in 1973. The lead federal agency to implement the regulations, which enforces it, they did not do that right away. And so the disability rights movement kind of formed out of that, a reaction to that. And they occupied a federal building in San Francisco and did a number of other actions that led to the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare implementing their laws several years later. And I also like to mention that the National Endowment for the Arts was one of the very first agencies to implement our regulations. So we were ready to go. We had already prepared, we developed our regs. And so after that, we started a series of educational programs across the country, working with the state arts agencies and the regional arts organizations to educate arts organizations around the country. So that when the ADA was passed in 1990, which affected everyone else. The Rehabilitation Act only applied to those receiving federal funds. The ADA was everyone else. So by the time that was signed in 1990, the arts field, I believe, was primed and ready to go with that. And it was already ahead of the game. So I like to brag about that. I wasn't there, but our predecessors were. So just a bit about the laws and regs. Both the Rehabilitation Act and the ADA require non-discrimination, equal opportunity, which includes the provision of reasonable modifications like auxiliary aids, like sign language interpreters, audio description, captions, braille, etc. Basic standards of architectural access, so making sure people can get into your building and access all the facilities. And then equal access to employment, programs, activities, goods, and services. So the Rehabilitation Act prevents discrimination on the basis of disability in programs conducted by federal agencies. So anything that our agency does, like Poetry Out Loud events, our Jazz Masters events, our websites, all of that has to be accessible. And then anyone receiving federal financial assistance, so that's our grantees, that's the state arts agencies and the regional arts organizations, and then any of their grantees. So if our money goes to, let's say, the Missouri Arts Council, and then that money gets distributed to one of their grantees, that grantee is required to comply with the Rehabilitation Act, as well as the ADA. So it all just boils down to needing to be accessible. So the Americans with Disabilities Act has 5 titles, but the two that are most relevant are Title II, which is state and local government services, because prior to 1990, they weren't required to be accessible, although most did. And then, so that caught up the state arts agencies. And so they have to comply under Title II, as well as the Rehabilitation Act. And then Title III is places of public accommodation and services. So anything from hotels, restaurants, movie theaters, as well as museums, historic sites, universities, performing arts centers, etc. I also want to note that Title I applies to employment. So that means that organizations cannot discriminate based on employment. You have to provide reasonable accommodations to your employees. So, so that's it for legal accessibility. I can't see people raising their hands, so we can answer questions at the end if you'd like. So to dive into the types of accessibility, this image has the same accessibility symbols that we had in the previous slides. So there are three types. There's physical accessibility, programmatic accessibility, and electronic. And we'll talk about what's under each of them. So physical accessibility, that's often what people think of when they think about being accessible to people with disabilities. Is your facility wheelchair or scooter accessible, or even for people who may use canes or walkers? Are your entrances and the routes through your building, your display cases, exhibit areas, ticket counters, your classrooms, studios, workspaces, restrooms and water fountains, your on stage and backstage. So if you are a theater or performing arts center, can a wheelchair user get on stage? Can they access the dressing rooms and the restrooms backstage? That's often a big issue. And if you are renovating, think about building access from the auditorium, the audience space, up to the stage. We saw recently the first wheelchair user to win a Tony Award, Ali Stroker, for the musical Oklahoma, which is appropriate for the Mid-America region with Oklahoma. So she won a Tony for supporting actress, and she had to wait backstage to learn if she was going to win the award so that she could access the stage if she won, and she did. But then if she was in the audience, she couldn't have come up on stage and have the experience that everyone else has of going up to the stage after they win the award, because there was no ramp. So I've seen auditoriums that do a wonderful job of providing access from the audience to the stage from the sides, and it works really well. So, and then also making sure that you have directional signage for accessible entrances, restrooms, etc. So that if you have a large building and they come to the main entrance and there's stairs, they will know where to go to get to the accessible entrance without having to go all around the building, because that can be both frustrating, time consuming, and even painful for people who have specific disabilities that affect their mobility. So very important things to think about. Also thinking about your outdoor spaces. If you are part of a park, or you have grounds or sculpture garden or picnic areas, you need to think about your communal areas, your paths, your parking. And there is a resource guide that we link to here from the US Access Board, which is a government agency that oversees physical access, or actually all types of access. So there are resources there, and I think, Lauren, you'll put them in the chat. We can make it available. And this is an image of some cabins with Playa, which is an artist community organization. So these are the spaces where people would go for artist residencies, and that's located in Summer Lake, Oregon. So moving on to program accessibility. So once they get in the door, they still need to be able to, they may need accommodations to access your programs. So, so we're looking at effective communication for people with vision and hearing disabilities, as well as what it's kind of an umbrella term we've been calling brain-based disabilities. So people with cognitive disabilities, sensory processing, which includes people on the autism spectrum, people with brain injury. And then also electronic accessibility for websites, videos, documents, podcasts, etc., as well as virtual platforms. So we'll go through all of these quickly. And I apologize to the captioner, I do talk fast, so I'll try to have a more moderate pace. Okay, so program accessibility for people with vision disabilities. We talk about having alternate formats for print materials, and that includes large print, braille, audio. You might have heard the term Talking Books for the Blind. That's a program from the Library of Congress. For a long time, they have converted books into audio cassettes. So that has been available for a long time, and organizations can create audio versions of their materials. And it's very effective in museums. As we've seen audio tours for everybody, they can help people with vision disabilities. It's less relevant right now in a virtual environment, but still important to have. Tactile opportunities for people with vision disabilities. You can see some examples here on the screen from Baltimore Center Stage Theater, where they allow people to touch some of the materials or some of the props and objects that are used in their plays. And there's an example of a woman touching, looks like costuming, some fabric, and then also 3D printed bones that are used in a play, a production of Antigone. So there are, if we see them in museums, they create 3D printed or bronze models of objects in museums. And excuse me, this is going to be increasingly difficult as museums open back up and they're concerned about transmission of coronavirus. So they're working on different solutions for that.
And Beth, I just want to share that this was a program that was funded, the Baltimore Center Stage, with the Library for the Blind and Physically Handicapped in Baltimore. So the Baltimore Center Stage took their program, and that was one of the places where that they performed to audience with people who were blind and had low vision. So as we mentioned, when we talk about partnerships throughout, working with disabilities, organizations serving people with disabilities. And then we did have one question already come in, Beth, which you've addressed, but I just want to mention it. Does equal opportunity mean that our programs should be available in large print? So discussing that that's an available accommodation, you can choose to have it available ahead of time, or if it's requested, being able to provide it, but then also now in the current environment we're in with electronic accessibility, and we're going to get to that, is making sure that documents are available in an accessible format for a screen reader. So I just wanted to throw that in. Did you want to add anything about that, Beth?
Yeah. I think anything that you do, it's important to have large print available. If you have brochures in a museum, make sure that you have large print on hand. Also for programs, you can keep them at the box office, you can keep them with your ushers. So anything you do, and often it's just easy and cheap to just print them out on your printers. They don't necessarily have to be professionally printed, although that's always nice. And then also any of those materials, if you put them on your website and let people know that they're available, they can access them ahead of time. So that's always an option. So yeah.
A lot of time relying on people's preferences and making that available, because large print could be different for everyone with a different type of vision disability. So allowing them to make that preference is a great approach to that. Yeah. Sorry, Beth, I'll let you continue.
Yeah. That's fine, that's fine. And also when you have something on a computer, they can blow it up as large as they want. So that's a really easy way to make things accessible. So just to wrap up this slide, having sighted guides, people who can take someone through, to give someone a tour through your facility or your museum, is one way to provide access, and they can describe what's on the wall or what's happening or what's in your exhibits. And then finally, the audio description, which is the description of the visual image, whether it's a still image or a video or a film. And those are things, and also it also applies to performing arts. You can have audio description for theater, even for dance, and it can be live audio description or recorded. And so for film, the newer films with DVDs and Blu-rays will have a track for audio description. And the final bullet here mentions one from the film Frozen. And it's a link that Lauren can provide, and it's really cute. It's an extra from Frozen, and it'll just give you an example of what it looks like. We decided we didn't have time to show it here. So those are things to keep in mind for vision disabilities. And just to, I mean, we only have about 20 minutes left, so we'll move quickly. So for hearing disabilities, that could be people who are hard of hearing, or people who are deaf, who identify as deaf. We have there's assisted listening devices you can provide in your performing arts venue or even in your museum. Sign language interpretation, captioning, which is if it's open captions for video, it means that they're always visible. Closed captions are things that you can turn on and off. So having it for your videos in your museum exhibits or in your films, or for live events. Those are all options. Real-time captioning, that's often what people use for performances, where someone is either there in your facility or in the auditorium or in the booth, or they are listening in remotely, can provide real-time captioning. And then transcriptions. So if you have a podcast, providing a transcript is a really crucial way to provide accessibility. We have that at the National Endowment for the Arts for our podcasts. Everyone comes with a link to a tab where you can just read it. And that, I find that useful for myself. If I don't have time to listen to a full podcast, I'll just skim through the transcript. And that's really a great way to make things accessible for everyone.
And Beth, I just wanted to share about that. A lot of times when we are reviewing grant applications and the grantee will have to submit the accessibility questionnaire, and that's also a link that I can share. Sometimes if an organization is having another organization host the event, a lot of times the response would be, well, that'll be up to the organization, the venue where it's being held at, and we're sure that they do that. But what's important is making sure that if you are applying for different grant projects, that you already know that information, that you are going back to those other organizations to ask if they have assistive listening devices and how they supply it and how that communication is done. So if you are working with multi-venues also, or if you're touring, that's important information to have, and not just assume that hosting organization is going to have it. So just we see that come up quite a bit.
Yeah. That's really important. I just want to, I apologize. I forget, does this end at 3 o'clock or does it, or I'm sorry, 4 o'clock, or is it an hour and 15 minutes? I'm assuming it was just an hour?
It's an hour.
Okay, thank you. So we've got less than 20 minutes. So, okay. So the term brain-based is not necessarily the most sophisticated way to put this, but I'm referring to disabilities that affect cognition, IQ, sensory processing. All these disabilities are different, but we kind of lump them together because some of the accommodations are connected to each other. So, so when people have sensory processing disabilities, they often can't be in an environment with a lot of noise, a lot of distraction, a lot of visual stimulation. So having quiet hours, opening your museum an hour early, it can be really important. And also having a quiet space that people can move to if they start to have difficulty dealing with the sensory input. So having a quiet room near your auditorium or near the classrooms where someone can go would be really important. Having sensory friendly programming, which is having, out of your you might have 6 performances of a play, but having an extra one that's just sensory friendly, meaning that it's relaxed, where you might not use the strobe lights or the loud flashing images. People can get up and move around. You might have the lights on a little low in the auditorium so people feel comfortable, they can move around. It's often called relaxed performances. That's what they call it in the UK. Offering noise canceling headphones, providing warning for strobes, just anytime you're going to do that. You've probably seen signs in box offices or places that there's going to be strobes or flashing lights or fog or a loud gunshot, things like that. It's really important to warn in advance. People with post-traumatic stress disorder might also have a bad reaction to that, so all of these things are important. Also having pre-visit materials, also called social stories, that are materials. It can be a PDF guide, it could be information on your website that often will provide information on what to expect. This is how you get here. This is what you'll see when you enter our building. This is where you get your tickets. This is where you're going to sit. These are our ushers. They can be geared toward children. They can be geared toward adults or anyone, that will just provide people with ease and knowledge ahead of time of what is to be expected. And there are many examples out there. You could just Google social story. And these are some photos from the Georgia Symphony Orchestra in Marietta. Challenge America just refers to our grant category. They were one of our grantees. And Lauren, just remind me, this was an event that they had. It was a sensory friendly performance.
That's correct. And that was the example I was giving earlier, where a parent of a child who's on the autism spectrum, there was a request where the child just wanted to be in an audience and see the bassoon, or they were, and so working with them and other arts organizations, other organizations serving people with cognitive disabilities, the executive director of the Georgia Symphony Orchestra was able to put together this program and also have it funded by the Arts Endowment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you know, it may look a lot like the, you know, the instrument petting zoo or those opportunities for kids, but you know, it can also be useful for adults who may not have ever had a chance to interact with musicians or instruments. So just, you know, just opening up opportunities.
Oh, and sorry, Beth, Angie just pointed out there was a question in the Q&A. Does the term brain-based include people who have mental illnesses?
Yes, yes, and that's another area that we should have mentioned. So it can include people with different types of psychiatric disabilities, including post-traumatic stress, and any others. This is a very informal category. It's just our way of kind of grouping things together. Oh, and I also want to note that people with traumatic brain injury can also fall into this, because that can affect their ability to handle sensory input, loud noises, etc. So yeah, so it's pretty all-encompassing. We're trying to create an umbrella. We'll probably change terminology as time goes on. We just often say cognitive, intellectual, developmental, psychiatric disabilities. So electronic accessibility, we've mentioned screen reading software, which is software that allows people with vision disabilities to access electronic content. It reads what's on the screen aloud. So websites need to be designed so that it reads it in a logical way, so that it would read everything on this page going from top to bottom and not get hung up on that little CC symbol off to the side. So it would read it logically. PowerPoint and Microsoft Word and other software also allows for this, as long as you use the right, as long as you use the templates that are provided. Alternative text refers to the text that can be added into a picture, an image, when you format it. There'll be a space allowed for alt text. So you just briefly describe it. This is an image, it's a black image with white text saying CC, and it refers to closed captioning.
And even for social media, there is an easy way when you upload photos or people from your public affairs team, there is an area where you can just put in an alternative text, and it's very easy to just physically describe it. And then also for any of this work done on the back end of a website, also working with your either IT folks or public affairs folks, who's ever monitoring that, to not just assume that they're writing the brief descriptions, or to make sure that they're providing in the headers sort of used by a person who is blind to skim the website. So it's about having those conversations as well to make sure that that's being done. Sorry, Beth.
Yeah, and some of these things are really easy. There are things that you can do. You don't need your web developer. You know, when you do social media, when you put out a newsletter, just make sure that all of your images are tagged, and that you use a template that is provided that will help it flow logically. Like this PowerPoint, we use the template that's provided, the layout, and it will read it logically. There are also accessibility checkers, and we have some of those mentioned that you can use to check to make sure it is accessible. And then I'll just kind of skim through. So for video, film, you need to make sure that you caption anything that's on your website, anything that you do, make sure that you have captions available, or transcripts, or both. The ASL interpreted videos, that's an option. So it could be a little interpreter in the corner, or it could be a separate video. There's an added cost to doing it, to doing that a second time, but it can really help demonstrate your accessibility and your commitment, and also just make sure that your information is accessible. And then audio description is another way to do that as well, having a second video with the audio description enabled, or layered in with your video. And there are resources out there for learning how to do audio description, and there are companies that can do it for you. And so here are some resources. Lauren, was I going to turn this over to? No, I think I'm going through this now. Sorry. So WebAIM is a resource. WebAIM.org can help you check your website or to get some information on it. The Wave Accessibility Tool can check your website. The W3.org is the Web Accessibility Initiative is also another source for that. For checking your accessibility. But I want to quickly move into virtual accessibility. We've been talking about this throughout, making sure that your virtual events, this can include live streamed performances and events, virtual exhibitions and collections. I know I've heard of several museums that early in the pandemic, when they had staff that didn't have much that they could be doing, started adding the descriptions, the alt tags to their images on their website. So, making sure that your exhibitions have those alt tags or a description of the image in the caption. Your video conferences and your webinars, make sure that those have captions and interpreters if necessary. I mean, if you are able to provide it, and that your online learning events and conferences are accessible. So you need to think about the platform access. Different platforms have different levels of accessibility. They also have, like if you go to zoom.com, there's a section on accessibility. WebEx, Skype, all the others will have some information, so do your research. So for people with vision disabilities, the effective communication is to provide, at the very least, describe the images that are on your screen. And then the other is to provide, if it's video, to have audio description in your video. For hearing access, having captioning through real-time real-time captioning like we have here today. You can also do auto captions. You can also caption video that's going to be archived. And you can do that through more cost-effective means through auto captions, but you still need to review those to make sure that they're correct. And then sign language interpretation is another option. Not, as we mentioned before, that not all people with hearing disabilities use ASL, but then not all people with hearing disabilities can read captions easily because it's often not their first language. So having both is a best practice, but it can be cost prohibitive. So asking your audience to let you know in advance what accommodations they need can help you know if you need that, if you need to provide both. And then when we talked about intellectual cognitive developmental disabilities, we've been throwing out tons of information very fast. That's not always the best practice. So making sure that the language on your screen is plain language and probably speaking a little slower than us might be helpful as well. So those are just some ways to make your visual or your virtual events accessible. And check out our guide. So Lauren, I don't know if you had anything else that I missed on this, and I was going to turn it over to you for the last.
I was going to say, refer back to the guide, but our contact information is at the end. Please feel free to reach out, and we can provide guidance about maybe what platforms to use and how to go about doing it. There are different options for providing captions. You see today here that there was also a link to stream text. A lot of times that's preferred by people who are deaf or hard of hearing because they can use they can open up that browser on maybe another device, or they can adjust the settings. So there's a lot of different approaches. And then in terms of getting things maybe captioned later, a lot of times people upload videos into YouTube, and then have it auto generated, which is mostly incorrect in the beginning, but then it's synchronized and you can continue to tweak the language. So we won't get into too many details, but I imagine a lot of these do come up. So onto budgeting, which is building in access from the start. I saw this a lot. I used to work in a museum, not just building the exhibit and then thinking about how you're going to make it accessible. It's thinking about it from the very beginning, as we mentioned, including people with disabilities in the planning. If you are going to be having an event that would require sign language interpreters or captioners, reaching out to those vendors ahead of time, when we are, you know, post-pandemic, in a post-pandemic world, when simultaneous events are taking place, it's great if you know ahead of time that you're going to be having a show interpreted, reaching out and having that planned ahead of time. Cost-effective and do-it-yourself options. I just mentioned a few with YouTube. There's also rev.com, which does captioning, I think for $1 a minute. That's after, that's not live stream.
And that's Rev, R-E-V, as in Victor, in case that didn't come through.
Yeah, sorry about that, R-E-V.
No, it looks like Rev, so.
And then I can speak for our own grant process, but including when you apply for grants, including accessibility from the start as a line item in the budget. You know, if you know you're having a performance, and making room for that, should you receive requests for interpreters or captioning, if you're not already proactively including that, similar for virtual events. And then a lot of times I've asked other arts organizations, we mentioned Baltimore Center Stage a lot. They've been very successful with getting funding for accessibility. And when I've asked how they've done that, they just, you know, if they need assistive listening devices, that's what they're promoting. And they continue to reach out and saying that that's the ask, and just, you know, keep pushing. There are, you know, there are organizations that will fund certain things, even a ramp, even though that doesn't sound maybe as exciting to some other organizations, but that is providing access and increasing diversity for your audience. So making the case when you reach out. One example of an accessibility statement I really enjoy, Nebraska Arts Council. They wrote, the Nebraska Arts Council believes that all Americans should be able to participate in the arts and humanities, including the 61 million adults with disabilities and the 50 million Americans age 65 and older. The goal should be full inclusion in all arts and cultural programs and facilities. So just an example, when you visit the accessibility webpage for Nebraska Arts Council, this is a message that's being sent across as an accessibility statement. So how in your own organization are you providing that message to people with disabilities? Beth, I know we have 3 minutes left, and feel free to throw in any last minute questions. Again, we've continued with that theme for community partners. We've already mentioned some of the VSA affiliates and arts and disability organizations, Schools for the Deaf, Schools for the Blind, Centers for Independent Living are a great resource, other disability groups. We have addressed state libraries for the term that's still used for the blind and physically handicapped. And then if there are other businesses that are serving people with disabilities. And then again, we say just start small. There's a lot of information. You know, just address one thing. You're not going to just reach, you know, entire accessibility overnight. And you know, how are you communicating? What are the needs of the community or some things? And then how are you receiving requests or some of the big messages? So then once you take the first step, then take the second step. And then again, we mentioned budgeting and start from there too. Beth, next slide.
Well, I just want to say that, you know, accessibility shouldn't be the end, it's the beginning. You know, it's the floor. And it's an ongoing process. You know, you will never become 100% accessible or reach a goal. It's an ongoing process, but it's one that, you know, just start. Just take the first little step. And so.
Yeah, include a lot of training resources. I know there's some folks on the call out from outside of the region, but the ADA National Network, adata.org, we're out of time, so I'm not going to spell it because my little bit of an accent here, but the, in particular for this region, Southwest ADA Center, the Great Plains ADA Center, we've mentioned the U.S. Access Board, the ADA 2010 Design Standards, Smithsonian Guidelines for Accessible Exhibition Design, Mid-America's Art Alliance, their accessibility checklist is available. And then for historic sites, then making historic properties accessible by the National Park Service. We'll share this PowerPoint also, and so we'll follow up with that, so it will be available. And then we also have, again, we've mentioned the states, regionals, and local arts agencies, arts and disability organizations, your local networks. I believe there is one starting in St. Louis, but we've included this Chicago Access Cultural Consortium that has links to great resources on their website and listservs. I did not see one for this region, but I know there's been a lot taking place. The National Arts and Disability Center, located on UCLA's campus, is a great resource. And then we also have Arts Endowment funded project examples on our website. I see it's 3 o'clock, so Angie, let me know if you want to just chime in. I think we just have one more slide, but that is available. You can do keyword searches for certain types of disabilities, or reach out to me and I can provide you with a list of project examples.
And we also have resources on our website. I don't know if we put that in our contact slide. So under the accessibility tab, we have all sorts of resources. Our Design for Accessibility Handbook is a little dated. We haven't been able to update things, but that provides a lot of good information. And we have a brief accessibility checklist that's helpful. And this is a repeat of the web accessibility links that we provided, the Graphic Artists Guild. So if we send this out, you'll have all these links together. Yeah, so here's our contact information. And if you go to arts.gov and you look under disciplines, there's accessibility, and you can find the information, all of our resources.
And I just see the name of it. Thank you for reminding me in the chat. It's Arts and Culture Accessibility Cooperative in St. Louis. So yeah, we look forward to hearing more and following up and sharing more information about what you all are working on. Are there any other questions?
If everyone has taken down the information they need, I can stop the screen share. All right, bring you back.
Thank you, Beth and Lauren, for presenting for us today. And if you guys have any questions after you leave the webinar, please feel free to reach out to any of us and we can answer those questions. The webinar will be on, the recording of it will be on Mid-America's Arts Alliance website, as well as the transcript. So thank you for joining us, and I hope you guys have a pleasant rest of the day.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.